You've tried it all. The new motivation tips, the endless productivity articles, and even some of the things I've been sharing on this podcast. But still, you're feeling stuck. Again, what is going on? Well, here's a quote from me to you that'll explain it all. Yes, this one's from yours truly, so give proper credit, please. You can only go as far as who you are. Yes, identity is everything, and who you are and who you believe you can be is what is keeping you stuck. But it's also what can help you soar. In today's episode, we're going to get back to that conversation we began in episode 14 about the power and significance of the stories you're telling and how they're keeping you stuck and shortchanging your creating power. You'll learn the 3 stories you need to get a reframe on so that you can step into your full power as a creating maven. Hey, creating maven. I'm Joy Spencer, your reframe specialist, with one important message. Your real work, it's not your job or your career. Your real work is what you create. And what you create is what sets you apart and makes you incomparable. It's your legacy. I'm here to show you a whole new way of working so you can create with your gifts, make a unique contribution, and finally get paid to be yourself. This is Reframe to Create. It ain't what they call you, it's what you answer to, by W.C. Fields. I love this quote because it says it all, doesn't it? Identity is everything. How you see yourself, what you call yourself, what you answer to, who you believe you are, who you believe you can become. It's everything, especially in a world that's constantly trying to mold you to be something else. One thing I've been very particular about ever since I was a child is names, both the names I use for myself and that I allow others to use for me. I'm also very careful about other people's names. It always breaks my heart when I meet someone who has a name that's not part of the dominant culture and I find out that they've altered their name or they don't bother using it because of shame or because people just keep butchering it. I always want to take time to hear how they pronounce their name and say it the way they say it. People are worth that effort. We shouldn't go around renaming people without their permission. That's messing with their identity, something we have no business tinkering around with. Names, identities, who we are. This is the type of stuff that gets me excited to talk about. I may not have known this W.C. Fields quote that I just shared as a child, but I was definitely living it even at a very young age. Imagine for a minute that you're my mother and you drop me off, the youngest of your 4 children, at a nursery school. And when you leave your 3.5-year-old, she's in a huge classroom full of other kids, teachers, and teaching aides. She easily moves into the crowd and seems to settle in with a group of kids. All seems well. You know where she is. After all, you yourself have dropped her off here. Great. So you leave. You go about your day, you run your errands, and then you come back to pick her up at the end of the school day. You line up with the other parents and watch as the teaching aides at the door is asking parents who they're there to pick up and calling out the relevant kids to connect them with their respective parents. Clearly, it's a big classroom, and even at the end of the day, the kids are deep in playtime and not paying attention to their arriving parents. Eventually, you get to the front of the line and you ask for your child, me. You say, I'm here to pick up Joy. The lady looks at you, a little confused. Who? My daughter, Joy. She looks around and then back at you a little quizzically. Who? Joy, you insist. There is no child here by the name of Joy. Now I want you to pause here for a second and tell me what would be going through your mind, your heart, your entire body at this point if you were my mom. Yeah. Now you're scanning the classroom frantically, and just when you're probably about to let out a scream, you see me, your child, playing happily in a corner with 2 other kids. That's her, you say, and you point, and you start shaking your arm. You look back at the woman, like, what is wrong with this woman? That's my daughter. And she follows your pointed hand and your gaze, and when she spots who you're looking at, she starts laughing. Oh, Dunstanette. That's Dunstanette. Dunsta who? Dunstanette. Yes, people, I did it. I did that. As a toddler, I went to a new school and told everybody that my name wasn't Joy, but was Dunstan. So when my mom came to pick me up, she couldn't even identify and pick up her child because everyone else thought I had a completely different name. But why did I do such a thing? Well, I wanted my name to match my identity, at least the one that I was formulating in my young mind. And that was as my dad's daughter. And since his name was Dunstan, then it made total sense that I should be called Dunstanette. I totally laugh and chuckle every time I think about this story because clearly I didn't just want to rename myself. I wanted to be in charge of my identity. I knew even then just how important it was to know and own who you are. And as far as I was concerned, Daddy's girl was all the rage and all the thing that I needed to be. And so my name was going to reflect that reality. Who you are is so important. Nah. It's not just important. It's everything. Who you are, who you believe you are, who you believe you can become. It's the most powerful thing you have. That's because who you are determines how far you can go. Yes, you can only go as far as who you are. If that's something big and expansive, then you'll go big and far. But if it's small and limited, you'll end up stuck and struggling to expand into the fullness of all that you could be. Now you know why I call you a creating maven. I'm helping you to see and believe that this is who you can be, that this is who you are. We were all born to create, every last one of us. In fact, even when we're in teams, organizations, movements, or even as part of a country, that is still our destiny. It's also their destiny. Teams, organizations, movements, and countries that are truly living purposefully are creating. They're creating and innovating. They're innovating and creating. They're creating beautiful things and experiences with their gifts and resources and putting them out into the world to serve others and make the world a better place. I mean, when you're not doing that, and when they're not doing that, what's the point? Why do they exist otherwise? At a gut level, we know this. We know this as individuals and even as groups. And when our heads are screwed on right, we strive for this, right? This ability to create, to birth new things, to bring beauty to life. But sometimes, a lot of the time, we get stuck. And when we get stuck, what do? Think about it. What do you do? If you're the go-getter I know you are, you roll up your sleeves and you get to work. You get out action plans. You set up strategies. You get motivated. You get inspired. You get help. You read books. You jump up and down and you stand on your head. Anything to knock the stuckness out of you and get you back into the game. It's kind of a gentle roughing up of oneself to knock out the cobwebs. People do this. And I've seen organizations do this. And sometimes it works. Sometimes that engine gets revved up again and things start moving, but not for long. Soon things grind to a halt again. This way is not sustainable. In fact, it's like pouring water into a sieve. Energy wasted and splashed all over the floor. That's because you can only go as far as who you are. This work on who you are is the work that people sometimes want to skip over. That's because it's hard work. I know it. I get it. It can really be hard to dig to understand the inner workings of your identity. When I work with teams and organizations, there can be a bit of resistance to this work. People want to talk strategy, OKRs, and action plans. But when I say, let's talk about who we are and why we exist, that can be like pulling teeth to the sound of crickets. But this is the work. And this work cannot, should not be postponed or denied any longer. Because, remember, without it, like water through a sieve. While knowing who you are is powerful and the thing that can make you soar, it can feel like a very squishy, intangible, ethereal thing that's hard to get a hold of. But it's not. And this is why. Who you are is simply this. It's your stories. It's the stories you tell yourself about who you are. It's the stories you tell about who you believe you can be. These stories most often show up in 3 ways to be exact. They are 1, your value stories, 2, your limiting stories, and 3, your aspirational stories. Guys, this is what I do. This is what I love to do more than anything else with clients as I listen and coach them. Whether you're an individual, a team, or organization, or even a country, I love to help you unearth what these 3 stories are for you and how they're keeping you stuck or helping you soar. And I love helping you get reframes to create the new stories that will help you Truly step into your creating power and bring forth the things and experiences you have inside of you that are going to make your world even better. This is it. This is the work. And it's the work that if you don't do it, you're not doing anything else. So let's dig into what these stories are for you. Think back. Do you remember flying a kite when you were younger? Okay. Maybe you never flew one, or like me, maybe you just weren't ever able to successfully get one off the ground for some reason, but you've seen it. You know of this pastime. I want you to envision this scene that has 3 parts to it. 1, there's the kite in its colorful, flitting glory. 2, there's the person, maybe you, holding the spool of string the kite is attached to. And 3, there's another person way down the field holding the kite high up over their heads in the air, waiting for the wind to be just so that they can release it and let you fly the kite. Now I have to give a shout out to my brother Aya, who I called early in the morning one day to make sure that I was getting this analogy right, because remember, I have never successfully actually gotten a kite off the ground. So thank you, Aya. Anyway, now I want you to think of you, the person holding the spool of string, as your values stories. Anchor stories about who you are now, what you value, what's important to you, and what makes you tick. The person way down the field holding the kite represents your limiting stories. They mean well. They're here to support, but they have a limited function. And if they don't release the kite when the wind is right and you're running to get it off the ground, then they're not an anchor like the value stories. They're a weight holding you back. They're limiting you. Your kite is our aspirational story. They're your dreams flying high into the wind of life. They're your imagination stretched, curiosity, and willingness to explore. They are all the things you believe can be different and more beautiful about you and the world. They fly high and pull you up, looking to the sky. Now, the beauty of how these stories interact is that they all have a role. The role of your aspirational stories is to help you to fly and dream. The role of your value stories is to anchor your dreams to your values and your compass so that you don't fly off into the nether regions and get lost. And the role of your limiting stories is to temporarily give you the support you need to be well positioned for the wind, provided that it doesn't hold on too long. These stories make up your identity. They are the bricks that make up who you are and who you believe you can be. So how can knowing these stories help you? Well, this can help you get down to the nitty-gritty of what's keeping you stuck and what's helping you soar. So first we got to unearth them before we can reframe them and craft new ones. I'm going to show you how you can know what these stories are for you in your own specific life. To unearth what these stories are for you, you need to ask yourself these questions and set aside time to let them percolate before you answer them in a notebook or a journal. To start, we'll look at your value stories. For your value stories, think back on this. Remember a time when you wanted to have or experience something really, 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 really badly. What was it? What did you do to get it? How hard did you fight for it? How did it feel once you got it? Then ask yourself about any obstacles you had along the way. Was it people, things, or circumstances? How did you react when you came up against these roadblocks? And then think about a time when you were really, really angry about something. Something that felt like an injustice against you or against someone else. See yourself hopping mad about this thing and remember the moment. What thinking about these moments does is it takes you back to stories that dig for what is important to you based on what you demonstrated in your life. These aren't merely your stated and idealized values that you pick off of a list. These are your real values based on the fact that you've lived them out. You've lived out what is important to you and what you value, and your stories of when you were in pursuit of things you wanted more of or that you wanted to fight against are a window into this. So ask yourself, what do I want more of? How do I want to feel? What's got me hopping mad? The stories that answer these questions will show you what's important to you. They reveal your moral compass. They anchor you. They keep you in integrity. They are life affirming. They keep you being you. These are your value stories. Next, let's look at your aspirational stories. To unearth your aspirational stories, imagine this. It's 5 years from now, and it's your ideal day. You wake up and stretch your body to embrace the day. Think about it. Where are you? What are you doing at this time of life? But most importantly, who are you? Who are you in this ideal 5-year state? What type of person are you? How are you showing up? What's your reputation? What are you creating? This is a tough one. And the way to really get value out of it is to really take the time to dig into it. So if you need to, pause this episode as I'm going through this and grab a pen and a notebook and answer the questions. You don't have to finish it off or write a treatise. Just write a couple sentences to get your juices flowing. What you want to do and be, the dreams you have, the places your imagination goes, these are your aspirational stories that like a kite can soar and take you to new heights of possibilities. Who do I want to be? What do I want to create? What's the legacy I want to leave? The stories that come up for you in response to these questions have the power to help you soar. However, these aspirational stories of yours, they often get interrupted and disrupted by your limiting stories. So let's look at this third and final set of stories that shapes your identity. To get wise to your limiting stories, ask yourself this. What's too much to expect? What's an unrealistic dream for me to have? What can't I have? Where can't I go? Who can't I become? Now be honest. Don't play the silly game of, I believe I can be anyone. I believe I can go anywhere. I believe I can do anything. Stop. Just stop. You don't really believe that. I know you don't, because if you did, you would have done it and been it. So tell the truth here. Do the hard work of digging around to understand what stories you're telling yourself that have this central theme of limits, should nots, and can'ts. Tell the truth about which stories you play over and over again in your mind about how you didn't succeed that time in the past, and so that means it can't, ever be for you again in the future. Stories of why it can't happen for you because of too tall, too short, too fat, too thin, too pretty, too ugly, too whatever. The stories of why it's happening for them but not for you. Yes, all of those stories. Dig them up out of the deep, dark basement you stuff them in and take a good look at them. What you're doing now, thinking through these stories, this may feel like nothing, but believe me, it's not. Unearthing is half of the battle and is a big part of the work. Unearthing all three of these stories, your value stories, your aspirational stories, and your limiting stories, is the first step in being able to reframe them and craft new ones that will help you to get unstuck. You can't change what you don't even know exists. If you've done this, if you've paused, took notes, and started the process of thinking through these stories and answering the questions I shared, or even if you plan to do it at a later time because right now you've got your hands in a sink full of soapy water, or you're outside running, or otherwise living your fabulous life, even so, just by listening, reflecting, and taking this in, you're doing something that a majority of people don't do. You've begun the process. So, congratulations, my creating maven. I am so proud of you. Because this is the work right here. This is how you help yourself become who you need to be so you can truly create all the beautiful things and experiences you were born to bring to the world. So now that we've unearthed your current values, aspirationals, and limiting stories, how can we use them to help you soar instead of being stuck? To do this, you need to go beyond merely knowing what these stories are and really see how they interplay with each other for you so that you can know what to do with each of them. As I explained in the kite analogy, these stories are interlocked in a highly harmonized dance, each with its own task and role. And this is what you want to do with each of them. Once you identify your value stories, you want to label them as stories that you want to keep. Writing them down, creating a story bank, telling them to other people, recording them out loud for yourself, anything to reinforce and remind you of them because they contain the things that are most important to you. Remember, these are your anchor stories that answer the questions, what's my why? And they answer them most powerfully. They will help keep you grounded once you start work on your aspirational stories. Once you've come up with your aspirational stories, you want to label them as stories that you want to create. These are the stories you want to bring into reality. You'll use your gifts to bring forth the product, service, experience, or project that is your story in action. What you create is the story of your gifts coming to life. Your aspirational stories help to create the roadmap for what you'll build your action plans on. They will be anchored and supported by your value stories, which will always help you to stay in integrity with your values and what's most important to you while you are innovating and creating the new. The value stories also play an important part in your aspirational stories by helping you to choose better partners for collaboration. We can easily get seduced into partnering with people who have similar interests and aspirations as we do, but that's not enough, and it doesn't get to the root of things. You must know their value stories, and they must know yours, because this is the fault line along which collaborations can turn out to be great bridge building endeavors or turn into terrible wall building disasters. And it will come down to being sure your values aligned with those who you go into partnership with in order to create the new. And finally, we come to your limiting stories. Once you identify your limiting stories, you want to label them as stories you want to leave behind. This is where you'll need help, perhaps a lot of help. This is where working with a coach is so critical to helping you realize one of my favorite quotes, which is this: you can have anything you want if you're willing to let go of the belief that you can't have it. And boy, do we have many limiting beliefs that are wrapped up tightly inside of stories of what's not possible for us. So you want to dig into these with the help of someone who can help you to hold yourself accountable, to take your committed steps of letting go. So we've done it. Now you not only know that who you are is what's going to keep you stuck or help you soar, you also know that who you are is 3 specific stories. And you know what those 3 specific stories are. You also know what to do with each of them in order to truly step into your power as a creating maven and get on with creating with your gifts and making your unique contribution. So here's your homework. I know I've given you a lot to think about today, so you're going to want to take some time to go back over this. There's a lot of heavy and deep work in this episode, so listen to it again and really slow down with a pen and a notebook so that you can work through it and sort through it. And then share. Tell me what's coming up for you and how this is hitting you. What surprises you? What shocks you? What excites you about your stories? Email me at joy@reframetocreate.com and tell me all about it. You can only go as far as who you are. And who you are is a foundation from which all your creating will spring, so do this important work. See you soon, Creating Maven. Until then, remember to always ask yourself, what will I create?